Imagine with me the mystical concept of a fire-breathing dragon, 400 pounds of muscle mass, wings spanning 36 feet wide, pushing red-hot waves of flame from its gullet and wielding them out through an enraged mouth. Smoke is blasting from its nostrils. It's flailing, wildly twisting, turning with a 10-foot-long tail, thrashing with might and crushing everything it comes in contact with. For me, this visual is symbolic of the rage and the backlash the push for racial justice has evoked throughout the history of this nation. I want to take a moment to invite you to look around at the person next to you, in front of you. We've been keeping our gaze forward for these past few days, but take a moment and look at each other. Really see each other. All of us sacrificing our time to be here. The word sacrifice at its Latin root, sacrificium, is to make sacred, to set apart from. It is the destruction or surrender of one thing to make something new. It is both my hope and my prayer that we have gathered here today as makers of something new. Maybe you've heard about the 13 cloistered nuns in a 425-year-old church in Greece who have devoted their lives to praying for the world. They tirelessly voice praises and petitions on our behalf, on behalf of humanity. Some may find this unproductive, but in their way, they are holding the frequency of love, peace, and safety for you, me, all of us, the us who get tired, who get overwhelmed and brokenhearted. But these keepers of the flame are steady. Their prayers and their intention imprint this world in ways that we may never understand or know. But what I know for sure is that I am living on the prayers of my grandparents and my great-greats. And so I too welcome the prayers of these nuns. Like the nuns, we too must be vigilant in our own ways, caring for the planet and each other. No matter how fatigued I get, I, with my brown skin, cannot escape the reality of racism. So I ask you today, if your faith tells you that I am your sister, your daughter, your niece, what does your faith tell you to do when my freedom, my safety is threatened? Is it the same thing that it tells you to do when your blood sister, daughter, or niece, when their life is unsafe or threatened? I spent time in upstate New York during what I call the triple pandemic, a global health epidemic, economic crisis, and outcry for racial justice. In upstate New York, it felt like I was in a bubble. While my friend Emma, a friend's sister, two friends' mothers, and too many more in our Harlem community were lost to COVID, no one in the upstate community knew anyone who had been ill or who had died. Although I felt alone in that experience, being in nature at that time was medicine for my mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Daily, I would walk the serene roads, awed by God's creation and majesty. One day I was so overtaken that it felt like I was Moses at the burning bush, for the beauty was too much for me to behold. There on those roads, the beauty was interrupted by Confederate flags celebrating the enslavement of my forebears. There were threats that shut down a gathering before it began, a gathering of caring neighbors wanting to say, "My life matters." While walking on that road, an occasional car would approach, and my heart rate would increase. My stomach would grip, and I would hug as far as I could to the shoulder, and I would pull my dog next to me, believing that I had a better chance at safety because someone would not want to hurt my dog. I stopped walking. Why am I talking about race today? I'm talking about race because it is intricately tied into the theme, thy neighbor, and radical acceptance. I believe that the division of God's people based on skin color poses a distinctive threat to humanity. It is the single greatest force separating us as humans. When it comes to the state of our nation, I so often hear, "This is not who we are." Well, I say this is who we are in too many ways, and that we cannot get to atonement and healing without acknowledgement. We can't get to acknowledgement without truth-telling. Our maturity has to move us beyond defensiveness and that knee-jerk response, "I'm not a racist," to how has my mind and my behavior been consciously and unconsciously shaped by the culture and systems ever mindful of race. Every single person in this room is trained and conditioned to uphold white supremacy. We're trained to not even say those words for fear of alienating or offending. But this conditioning will not just root itself out on its own, dissolve or melt away because we're teacher of the year or coach of the year, we're a minister or religious leader, because we're a charitable and lovely grandmother and a great friend. Until we can say that this current state is who we are right now, we are going to compost denial, willful ignorance, and pouring it into the soil where nothing good and new can grow, nothing vibrant. It is time for us to turn the soil and fertilize it with truth and with love. What might the world look like if we embraced Ubuntu at such a time as this? Ubuntu is an African word and philosophy depicting a way of life. At its root, it means people. And it speaks to our shared humanity through community, collaboration, and connection. It is the uplifting of one another. And it's encapsulated in the phrase, "I in you, you in me. I am because you are." What if our faith practices, such as prayer meditation, introspection, the wisdom teachings we receive, and the Holy Spirit truly guided and convicted us on the moral road. When we have steeped ourselves in these practices sincerely, we will begin to view the world around us through a lens that sees the divinity and the dignity in each other. So how do we move forward to becoming more human, I would say? We have to retrain our conditioned brains through learning, unlearning, listening, and critical thinking. The insidious neurological grooves in our brain are carved by narratives that are deliberate campaigns to separate, and they can only be rooted out through intentional, personal campaign to expose ourselves to new narratives that rework our understanding of what it truly means to be thy neighbor. Narratives that challenge our understanding of love and the responsibility the faith we profess calls us to. New narratives that develop our capacity for compassion and empathy. Because while racism is systemic on a macro level, it is a heart crisis on a micro level. I believe that there are enough people here in this room, along with the nuns and all of the people that I know and you know who are working in light and love to pull us toward a new paradigm. How dare I not believe this is possible as I live here, having a life my ancestors never knew? For almost 20 years, I've been working at the intersection of health, racial, and environmental justice. But I realized that my work in health justice was addressing the problem of disparity downstream, and that I also needed to work upstream to plug the dam of racial inequity, because there is no racial inequity, there is no health inequity. So I began facilitating mindfulness-based racial healing workshops and conversations, leading activities that amplify our shared humanity. These include the Racial Healing Lab that brought Black, white, and women of color together to explore race, identity, connection, and healing. The Racial Healing Hub, which utilizes an interactive arts-based framework to host events and conversations that promote truth, reconciliation, and transformation. As a partner with Omega, that has evolved into a model for how retreat centers and change agents may collaborate to promote social justice. And these are just a few ways that I have been called in. And I have hope for all of us that our authentic and unique ways that we're called into will move us to continue to stay in the work, to help move humanity through this turbulent and divisive time in our nation's history and into a healthy, equitable, and sustainable world. Like those 13 nuns cloistered, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due time and season we will reap if we do not give up. I in you, you in me. I am because you are. Ubuntu.